We have a friend of a friend who owns a UPS store, and last time I checked, she was driving a Bentley. So
It is without question one of those things that when you're on the outside looking in, all you see is like, wow, that must be really, really cool.
welcome to the Rich and Regular podcast, where we explore life at the intersection of money. I'm Kirsten.
And I'm Julian. And today we're talking about franchising. This is a conversation that is a long time coming. I'm pretty sure I actually wrote a blog post about franchising and never published it. Like it's been sitting in draft for probably about 4 or 5 years. But first, I want to shout out to the Afros on Fire group on Facebook. They actually are the ones that triggered me to want to talk about this particular topic. I've been a member of that group on Facebook, which is a really cool group, for a while now. I don't remember who it is exactly, but the topic of franchising is always coming up, and it's one that like gets dripped in and mentioned because it's like a slept on approach to building wealth. And every single time I always want to be like, I want to jump in and like say something about it because we're so intimately familiar with that world. But I don't, because I know like it's not a quick conversation and it's not an easy one. And so then I was like, you know what, we should just do a podcast about it, because I know for a fact there are a lot of people who are probably like me at some point in their lives and like really like thought about owning a franchise. And it seems like, you know, the cheat code or the simpler way to get there. And, you know, I think in the last couple of years, especially when it comes to like Black wealth and personal finance, has been so much focus on franchising as a path to building wealth. And so I want to talk about it because it is something that we are familiar with. I, for sure, am intimately familiar with franchising. And I think this is a bit of our franchise 101 to help anyone who is seriously interested in it evaluate whether or not it's something for them, but at least to know like what that first 1 or 2 steps might be like, so that they don't make any mistakes or have any misconceptions about what they should expect.
Yeah, there was definitely a while where I imagined myself as a franchise owner. I thought I would own some Smoothie Kings and some other types of restaurants, but Smoothie King was the one that I spent the most time thinking about. And sometimes I still think about owning a franchise, not a Smoothie King, but a different type. In true form, the way that I think about it is the way a lot of people think about it. It's always the sexiest version. You're always the franchise owner of something in the most perfect location. You know, it's a walkable area, or it's an airport, or it's a stadium.
It's a cash machine.
Yeah, the reality is 97% of franchises are not in the most optimal areas, locations, or places. And so you really have to bring your business savvy to the party. We know several people who are franchisors, and it's honestly a mixed bag. There are those who love it, and then there are those who wish they had done it differently. It really depends on the brand that they partnered with, the timing. You know, we'll get into the conversation, but across the board, it's not just food and beverage. We've got friends who own fitness studios. We've got friends who own Chick-fil-A's. You know, we're here in Atlanta, so there are several owner-operator, husband-wife teams. We have a friend of a friend who owns a UPS store, and last time I checked, she was driving a Bentley. So there are some that are doing very well and others that are doing not so well.
Yeah, it is without question one of those things that when you're on the outside looking in, all you see is like, wow, that must be really, really cool. You know, and it's not exactly the same, but I do think, and we may end up recording a podcast about this as well, how people view like getting a book deal, you know, with a major publisher or something, right? Like when you're on the outside looking in, it's like, whoa. And I'm not trying to diminish our experience. We've had a great experience, but I think you have a rosier point of view when you're on the outside looking in. So first I want to start with a little bit of backstory. This always feels weird because it's requiring me to go back in time, but I do want to establish some credibility. And so you mentioned wanting to own some Smoothie Kings. I know when we first met, I pretty much shared with you an outline for like what I was going to do. And it was like, yep, I'm going to buy my first one here and the third one, the fifth one, and then I'm going to use that and pivot into the hotel industry. But I am a student, a pupil of the hospitality industry, true and true. My mom worked in the industry. My dad worked in it. We met when we were working for one of the largest, most reputable franchisors here in Atlanta. And so I've worked on both sides, pretty much every part of the operation in the business. There's deep familiarity in it. I studied hospitality in undergrad. I've seen quite a bit, from the ground up, especially when it comes to hotels. And so this is not something that we are just riffing on. It's something that we're intimately familiar with. Granted, you didn't come up in the industry, but you worked 10 years for that company, maybe more, right
Yeah.
around that ballpark, right? So you're familiar with it. And it's certainly a big part of our lives. And so I wanted to kind of start with just breaking it down and then just making sure that if this is something that you're interested in, you have a better starting point than what you might just see like a quick little thing on the internet. So first, what is franchising? And it's basically a business model where one party licenses their brand, their intellectual property, the systems, their training tools, their supplier agreements to another party in exchange for a fee. So I have all these things. They are tried and true. They are tested. They work together. I package it all up and I'm giving it to you so that you can take this business operation, this business in a box,
Right.
place it down where you are, plug it in, make it uniquely yours to a certain extent. And I get a percentage off the top of the revenue that you gain in exchange for helping you skip past figuring out all of these things on your own. And so in this example, I would be what's called the franchisor and you would be the franchisee,
Mhm.
right? So the franchisor gives you all of these things and you as a franchisee pay me a percentage of your revenue in exchange for all of this support, the systems and all the things that I've given you to essentially make you be a business owner overnight, right? Now, why would I do that if I'm a franchisor? Why wouldn't I just keep it all to myself? And there are a couple of reasons why. One, let's say we're talking about a fast food or fast casual restaurant. Like my costs are lower by just doing that, right? I would be considered what's called asset light. So if I owned it myself, that means I own the business. I have to pay the people who are in that business. I have to insure that business. I need to operate that business, do all of those things. Very expensive, even if it's profitable, but that makes it more difficult for me to go from one property to five to 10, 10 to 100. It's a lot easier for me to do that if I just need to license it to you, let you figure out all those
Right.
details. And all you need to do is order my signage, order my uniforms, order my ingredients so that you can make the food, etc. That's the play. And that's why
Yes.
franchising is so popular. Now, on the other side, why would you as a franchisee want to do this? And the reason for that is because you get a recognizable brand.
Right.
So it's a lot easier for you to open up a Five Guys restaurant in your city than it is for Kirsten's Burgers and Shakes, right? Even if you got a great
That sounds
logo,
delicious.
there's probably hair in the food. Is my guess. Like there's a lot of hair in the food, and that there's Yelp reviews to prove it. I'm giving you brand standards, right? Which is a really, really big part of this process, which is basically the Bible of the brand. Everything that you need to do, when, why, how to clean it, how to serve these people, right? You get all of those things. You don't have to think about it. I'm just being handed it to you. You study that book, you implement that book, and you're up and running in a significantly shorter period of time. You don't need to create anything. You don't need to think about what the summer promotion is going to be, because last year's summer promotion was a smash when you tasted it in Kansas City, and now you get to be the first person to bring it to Atlanta, Georgia. And then generally speaking, the royalty payment is like affordable, right? We're talking 3%, 5%, whatever that number is, but like it's a small percentage.
But it's
And
not your only expense.
no, it's not your only expense. And
Yeah.
this to me, I think
This is an addition.
this is such the huge oversight. Like, I don't want to skip ahead, but like people think that that's the only fee that you're paying. It was like, what's 3 to 5% if you're making?
No.
I was like, yeah, no, just trust me. There's a long list of expense, and that's just the ones that are mandated. There might
Yeah.
be a bunch of other expenses that you want to opt into if you just want to be a little bit more competitive or have some flexibility to kind of make that business your own. So I think that's like the general gist, right? That's what
Yes.
franchising is. That's the difference between the franchisor and the franchisee.
Yes. It sounds great, but there are some barriers. Like it really sounds great, but there are some barriers to entry, which is why more people don't do it, starting with the application fee. It's not something that you can just jump in and like raise your hand for and volunteer. You have to fill out an application, and that application costs money. And that's just for the license. Now, this can be a couple $1,000s. It can be as much as, I've heard Chick-fil-A's is like $10,000.
Which actually isn't that much relative to other fast casual or fast food restaurants. It's typically presented as, wow, it's really affordable considering that this is a multi-million-dollar business. So it's like, I mean, they're doing that to like lure you in. It's no, and no disrespect to Chick-fil-A, right? But like, it doesn't mean that like anyone with $10,000 can be a Chick-fil-A owner. You know what
No,
I
there's
mean?
an acceptance rate. They can
Correct.
only open so many buildings in a year, so many boxes in a year, whether it's food service or not. And they don't accept everybody.
No.
This is just to say that you're interested. It's not like you get a refund if they don't
If they
approve your
just,
application. So
exactly.
they're almost hoping that people will self-select out by including all of these application fees on the front end. Now, in some cases, your application fee can be waived. So if they already know that you're an existing franchisor, or you happen to meet them at a conference and they really want your business, they really want your expertise, then they will waive it for you. But just know, if you're interested, it's like applying for college. You got to be prepared to write a check, and you got to have all of your papers, ducks, finances in a row.
Yep.
You don't start with franchising as a means to get your financial life in order.
No.
It already has to be there. Now, after the application, let's say you get accepted, they're going to give you what's called a UFOC, which is a Uniform Franchise Offering Circular.
Worst name ever.
I know. It's really bad.
Yeah.
UFOC.
Yeah.
It sounds like UFC and UFO at the same time. But this is basically the contract that's going to outline everything that's entailed in your ownership. It's going to outline all of the fees that you have to pay, all of the management terms that you have to agree to. It's also called the franchise agreement, but it's very similar to a prospectus that you would get with a mutual fund,
Yep.
where it just tells you the deal. And it can be hundreds of pages long. And the franchisor is legally bound to provide it to you, but you are not legally bound to read it. But I would highly suggest that you do, because a lot of the challenges we would have with owners when we were back in our hospitality role is that things would come up that they didn't know to expect,
right,
because they never read through the hundreds of pages, and a lot of people just don't. But that contract is going to include all of the information, including the term, which is the length of time that you can legally license the brand. These tend to be longer term agreements, especially when you're talking about hotels. We're signing like 30-year agreements,
yep,
or 20-year agreements. It's very similar to taking on a mortgage. You're
yep,
talking about a long-term partnership. And so the same level of scrutiny that you would apply to someone you're going to marry, or a home that you're going to buy, you want to kick the tires and read and talk to other owners before you jump into the deal. Then, once you get into the business, you've got this long list of stakeholders. And these are people that are there to support you, that literally have a stake in your success or your failure.
yep.
And I found that there's really like 3 different categories of support. There's the sales and franchise.
I was going to say, depending on who you ask. You ask the salespeople, they got their own point of view,
Well,
right?
hello,
They
former salesperson here.
Right. What's the line? What's the line? There's 2 types of people. There's the salespeople, and then there's everybody else.
Yes,
everybody
absolutely.
else works for us.
That's right.
According
You're either
to
driving revenue, or you doing nothing.
Or you supporting the revenue driving activities.
100%. Nothing happens until you sell something. Look at me. I'm getting back in my bag. So there's 3 categories of support. There's the sales and franchise department, and this is basically the sales manager and their team. That's your initial point of contact to purchase the franchise. They walk you through the agreement. They invite you to the conference. They may answer a couple of questions, throughout your ownership, see if you're ready to buy another one, bring up some deals to you. But their job is to really increase the footprint of the brand.
I was about to say, and because of that, they are also likely to let you know when or if another entrant is coming into your market, right? So if you happen to be the only, I'll just keep using Five Guys for the sake of simplicity. If you happen to be the only Five Guys in your area, they're the ones that will tell you like, hey, we're actually going to be building another one, really exciting. And you'd be like,
hold up.
No, when I saw it, I was the only game in town.
Right.
Like, what do you mean we're building another one? Where is it going to be? Is that going to impact my business? Right. Which is a very real thing. And again, you talk to enough owners, they will tell you like that's one of their biggest issues, that in an effort to grow, oftentimes there's this cannibalization of the business because they're more interested in growth and less interested with your individual profitability.
Yes, there are other types of sales teams within any organization, but this is primarily the one that's focused on adding dots to the map. The second group of people that will support you is your operations support. So these are area managers, regional managers, quality, training, field marketing, brand managers, all of the people that are working to support your store and its everyday operations. So they're far more hands-on. You probably have someone assigned to your store that has, dozens of other stores in their portfolio, but they're your person. So
Yeah.
you've got 8 to 10 of them,
Yes.
like just a bunch of those people that help you with the sales, marketing, group sales, catering, all those things.
Yeah. And they may be there, on quarterly basis, right?
Yes.
So like every single one of those people, like maybe they'll team up for a visit, but like you got to think about that, right? Like that's a day, an hour or two, and there might be homework that you need to be prepared for when quality comes or when your area manager comes. There's certain things that they're expecting you to do. Like you're not just focused on the business, you're focused on doing the things that they need you to do, because in their eyes, like this is what you need to do in order to get the kind of results that you were hoping for as a prospective franchisee.
Absolutely. And then last but certainly not least, you got your vendors. So these are the people that provide you with the ingredients, the raw materials, whatever you actually need to keep your store or your business open and running. These are the people that bring them to you. So it's your milkman, it's your UPS guy, it's your maintenance guy, whatever. It depends on
Food delivery,
Yeah.
internet service provider.
And these are typically sourced by the franchisor. So you have to use them. It doesn't matter that you can get it cheaper. It doesn't matter that you have a cousin Steve
I'm
that
just
can
about to
do it.
say.
You you have to use the ones that are in the brand standards, because that franchisor has worked out some sort of pricing advantage or deal based on the scale that they have. If I am a franchisor and I've got 1,400 stores, I want to get my pillows from the same person because they're going to give me a great deal on the pillows because I order so many every year. If I had everybody ordering their own, not only does it create an inconsistent guest experience, it also costs you and me more money.
Yeah,
And
no
so,
one benefits from pricing power from buying in bulk.
exactly.
Yeah.
So you've got all these people that you need to manage before you even get down to your employees, before you even get down to your city, regional people, your elected officials, the safety officer. It's not a thing. What's it? It's not a safety officer. The person who comes in and does like safety inspections.
Risk management.
Yeah, like the person who comes in and makes sure your water is safe. Like that's a whole other set of just like regulatory contacts. So you have to have a lot of time. If you're the owner, you got to have an understanding of all of these people
Yeah.
that you need.
I was about to say, it's very corporate where it's like, man, like I got this job and I thought I was going to be doing X, Y, Z, but I spend 40% of my time
In meetings.
talking about what I need to be doing. And I don't have nearly enough time to actually do the thing that I do. And I have to do it because my franchise agreement says if I miss this meeting or if I'm not prepared,
They gonna find
they
me.
get to find me, slap my hand, and now I got to pay money. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you can kind of see where we're going with the friend. I'm trying to show both sides here.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And because again, I think so many people just have this outside looking and very romantic point of view on it, but they don't really understand what the actual ownership experience entails. Okay, so let's say you're okay with all of that. You are prepped for it. You have worked. Your finances are in a good position, and we didn't talk about that, but like your finances got to be buttoned up. I'm talking about, and you'll see that in the application fee. Like they're not going to tell you don't apply if you don't, but credit has to be on point. They will oftentimes tell you that you need to have a minimum net worth. If you don't, then you need to be putting together an ownership team that can paint some type of solid picture to embody what they want, because no one's going to license you their intellectual property to put on a building if they feel like you might default on a loan, or if you don't have the money or the pockets to actually go through with the build or the renovation or whatever. So you've got to be in like tip top financial shape, which is why there are times where you'll see like an ownership group and it's like one or two people, but like underneath it all, there might be like 20 or 30 people.
There's
like
the principal,
I
and then
own
there's
0.001% of this hotel.
Because they needed that $10,000.
That's it.
they needed your contribution.
Your silent partner.
Yeah.
Right. But I needed your contribution, and you will get your cut, and you will get to stay at the hotel once or twice a year. Right. Okay. So let's say you check all of those boxes and you're ready to move on to the next step. Like, what should you consider before like really, really jumping in? And this in and of itself could be a podcast. That's a podcast that I could do 40, 50 episodes on it. If I had to boil it down, the fundamentals, right? Very similar to investing. Like the fundamentals are so critical. And the first one that I'm going to say is one that is either like overlooked or like some people just think it's obvious, but I'm telling you, like, I don't think people understand the specificity of it, which is location, right? We're for the most part still talking about a real estate transaction. In most cases, if we're talking about a brick and mortar location. And I think the biggest issue that I see is that people think location and be like, oh, well, we'll be the first Five Guys in Smyrna or in Atlanta or whatever it is. Like get really, really specific. I'm talking about like the first Five Guys in the Atlanta business district downtown. Like that's really going to be your market for a certain period of time. You might have a broader radius that is yours, but if it goes well, I can assure you that you will be operating within a smaller radius. And so if you aren't really clear on what your demand drivers are for that particular location, it's a ticking time bomb waiting to go up. And that leads me to the idea of demand, because I think this is like the second biggest misconception that people have when it comes to franchises is that they believe the brand will generate demand on its own, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I
Well,
buy,
that's what the sales team tells them.
correct, all people will come from far and wide to eat these burgers.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you right now, like you will be in for a rude awakening if you just take that at face value. There has to be existing demand. The brand will convert the existing demand, right? So if there
Right.
are already people there that are hungry because there's a hospital across the street or a athletic, park, and there are tons of traffics from games and those kinds of things, and people are hungry, yes, then you know that by putting a Five Guys there, you are going to do a pretty good job of attracting people. And then you can also do corporate lunches or whatever it is. But if you just put it somewhere, you just build it thinking that they will come because you lit up the thing and you spent $20,000 on a lighting package,
Yeah.
that's not enough, right? You have to like really, really think about what the demand drivers are and be really clear on what they are. The second or the third thing I would say is the reputation of the brand, not just to customers, but also to existing franchisees, because those are two very different people that need to be served by a franchisor. And so
Mm-hmm.
you want to know, like, how do people really feel about that product? Do they rank it as one of the best tasting burgers or pizza or cupcakes or whatever versus other? Has it won awards versus the other? Like, if it's not even on the list, good luck
Mm-hmm.
actually, being able to attract new customers. Typically, like people aren't just out here trying new foods every single day, right? Like you want to try something that they know is going to be good. But on the other side of that, it's like, what are franchisees saying? Right? Like, are they frequently signing the license and then like trying to get out really quickly because they're not pleased with the level of support that they have? And so you want to make sure that if possible, you find opportunities to hear from franchisees in an authentic way,
Mm-hmm.
because and that last part is important because there are always going to be franchisees that are speaking on behalf of the franchisor. I'm talking about franchisees who are just being honest with you and are like telling you like, this is what I experienced, the good, bad. It should be a mixed bag because
Right.
no one is perfect. So I think that part is important. The last thing I will say, I'll say two more things, but the last thing I will say is leadership of the brand. And by that, I mean, who is the president of the company? Who is the executive board? Who is the chairman? And are they leaders of their industry? If they're not, what you most likely are dealing with is a bunch of people who decided to launch a brand, who are leading a brand, but may not necessarily be like really, really good at it. And as a result, like you're going to reap the benefit of them kind of being wishy-washy. Like,
A lot of times they'll bring in a executive to manage the stock price.
right.
Right? Like there's a difference between an executive who's coming in to fix and lead the brand from an operational perspective and one that is coming to lead the brand strategically so that the stock
Correct. Keep
continues to
support
grow.
lean. Don't give too much. Keep support lean so that we can keep profitability here in order to drive performance of the stock and make sure that the company looks valuable to prospective stockholders.
Correct.
Right. And I think if you are an owner, a franchisee, respectfully, you don't really care about the stock price. You care about the level of support that you're getting, the marketing, and all of those things that are going to help your store or stores be successful. So I would say, I'm not going to say stay away from it, but if you look up who the leader is of that brand, the president, the chief marketing officer, whoever, if they're not leaders in their space, they're not being quoted in the industry magazines or being mentioned in the media, like you just know that you shouldn't, at a minimum, you shouldn't be overpaying or paying a premium in fees for that particular brand. Like generally speaking, those companies, the leaders of the industry, are going to be more expensive, and you get what you pay for.
Right.
Expertise, proven brand, proven results. The absolute last thing I'll say, and this is a bit of a terminology thing here, is, and this is a bit of like looking at all of the above, is getting what's called a feasibility study. And some brands might actually force you to do this, but a feasibility study is basically a study that you can commission. You have to pay for it, and they might require you to do it, but you have to pay for it, which is their way of saying, hey, you want to open up a hotel here, restaurant here. I need you to commission a study to see how feasible, how viable this business might be in this specific area. And basically, it's someone crossing the T's, dotting the I's, doing all the nitty gritty details to look at all the things that might potentially impact your business, and then coming back and saying, yes, no, here's what you need to think about. And those are the things that I think will dictate whether or not you build it on this corner or the other corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could be right across the street. And that little thing could be the difference maker between whether or not your business succeeds or fails. And that's, I think, like one of the,
It is for me. If I got to turn left and it ain't no light,
it'd be
I'm gonna
just
keep driving.
that
Like
little thing, that little thing.
I'm petty like that, where it's
Yep.
like I'm not waiting in between cars. Like it is one of my pet peeves. If it's inconvenient to get there,
Yep.
then
If
I'm
parking
not
is
going as
bad.
often.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, everything you said is correct, because we know people that have had franchises and they've had the same struggles that derailed their business based on all of those factors. My cousins owned a
That's
Wingstop
right.
in Kansas, like near the University of Kansas. He used to play basketball there. He knew it was a sure bet.
Sounds like a no-brainer.
Yeah, he is a local legend. And so they franchised a Wingstop, and it lasted a couple years, but his wife will tell you that was the hardest thing that they have done, because they just underestimated the downside. They had spent all of this time thinking about the upside. Very me, like this is going to be incredible. But what they didn't think about was the seasonality of students and the turnover, and how much wastefulness and how much they would be asked to donate would cut away at their margins. Not to mention, they lived in a different state. He was still playing ball professionally. And so the amount of hands-on stuff that they could do while having two kids just wasn't great for them. Even outside of the food and beverage industry, I have a friend who bought into a fitness studio franchise. They did spin, they did infrared saunas, like it was very boutique. Like there were very high highs in 2019 when they opened, very low lows when COVID first started. And then to bounce back from that, there was a bounce back, but it was just like the series of very low lows, very high highs. And all of that is very hard to manage with a staff and regular recurring expenses and this squad of stakeholders that are depending on you to level out your business.
Yeah.
And so there's just, there's obviously great stories. Like I said, the woman who owns a UPS store, balling, like balling. Now she is there quite a bit, not as much as she used to be. Like there is an upside when you have a franchise that has been there for a while, and you find the right team, and you find the right manager, the right location, the right community. You've got your regulars.
The right lease agreement at the right time.
Yeah, she checked all of those boxes. She got that zero interest rate, like that it ain't zero, but it's close to it. She got a great lease. She did it when everybody was online shopping, so the business was booming. And it took a while to figure out like the right quantity of things to have. Like, how do you make sure you don't run out of boxes? How do you make sure you don't run out of ink? How do you make sure that the door is open when it needs to be? But once she got it, things got easier.
Yeah.
But it can go either way. It is truly a business. A lot of people think that it is easier than starting from scratch.
Yeah.
And it's like, not necessarily. Like in some cases, you still are starting from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's a great segue, because I wanted to spend some time kind of doing some myth busting. I think I've already busted a couple bubbles, but let's bust some myths a little bit. And I think that's the first one, like this idea that franchises by design are easier than starting from scratch. And I would say yes and no. Like the reality is, you kind of have to imagine, like, let's say you're a business owner in Florida and you're being locked into using a vendor that someone from the Chicago headquarters thought was a good idea because they're highly ranked and they're your technology vendor or something like that, but like it just doesn't work for you in Florida because the sand comes in and gets in the way because of it's like
Yeah.
typically something so minor like that. Or you're a coffee shop owner. I remember our friend Amanda, who owns a franchise, and she's excellent at it because, like us, she spent 25 years working for the franchisor. And so she very quickly became the type of franchisee that not only could be successful, but could help the franchise be successful. And as a result, she has benefited from that on a number of fronts, right? But I've been in situations where franchise agreements were signed and the vendor just doesn't ship there. It's like, what do you mean? You're the approved vendor. The company said I have to go through you. And it's like, yeah, but we don't send stuff to Mexico. We don't send
Hmm.
stuff to Florida. It's like, or we don't have a warm weather version of it because we're in Chicago. We tested it. It ranked well. And it was like, yeah, but like we're in Florida. It's hot, hot. Like we
Hmm.
need something way more comfortable than that. And that's not an option for you. And your area manager or regional manager is adamant about it for whatever reason. And now you're an upset owner because you can't make a very simple tweak because you are locked into this agreement. I'll give you another example. We just, and this is minor, right? But like we just booked a vacation to a hotel in the Caribbean. We're looking forward to it. And I got the email confirmation and, you get the picture and then it's like whatever. But the picture was of, it was like of a couple like in an airport and it was like very clearly like a cold weather situation. And I thought that was odd. But again, as someone who is in marketing and has had that conversation before, if I'm an owner of a hotel in the Caribbean and you just booked something in my hotel, like that's not the first email that I want to be sent
Right.
to somebody. I want it to be something that's unique to my property. And what their brand will tell you is like, yeah, but like the system doesn't work that way. It
Right.
doesn't allow you to do that. We make these decisions based on XYZ. And it's like, but that doesn't make sense, right? This is the kind of agreement that you're signing up for. So you have to be willing to take those things and run with it. We just got back from Brownsville, Texas. I remember this was the first,
Tennessee.
I keep saying Texas. It's Tennessee. And we were so used to checking in using our phones.
Hmm.
And this hotel, they just didn't have it, right? That happens as well. And so think about it. You're the franchisee that's doing all the right things, but people like us, as fans of the brand, go somewhere else, have a bad experience. We don't take it out on them. We take it out on you,
Right.
right? We don't go back to your store because now we're that frustrated with the brand as a whole. And so that's the nature of the agreement that you're signing. And so not only do you have to be a good brand citizen, you have to foster good brand citizenship with other franchisees. And you have to make that decision around whether or not you're going to tell on them or if they're going to tell on you, because like we're all in this together. You're getting into business with like potentially hundreds of other strangers who every single day have an ability to reinforce that brand or detract people from it, which could have a completely good or negative effect on your business. And so it's not always easier than starting
No.
from scratch.
In a
Like,
lot of ways, you actually are still starting from scratch.
correct.
Unless you have a relationship with that owner, they're not there holding your hand
No,
through the transition. And
no.
you're not always getting a healthy business. Sometimes owners are kicked out. They may not want to sell, but they have to sell because the franchisor is over it. On top of that, like how many times have you read a review of a restaurant or a daycare where the person is citing the change in ownership as the reason they don't come no more? Where
Right.
it's like, I used to come when Linda owned it, but now that this new person owns it, I don't trust it no more. Even my niece's daycare, they switched the ownership in the middle of the time where she was there, but she only had a couple months left, so it didn't make sense to pull her out. But they weren't as happy with this new ownership of this franchise. You
Yeah.
sign up to send your kid to a Kids Are Kids or Kinder Care or whatever it is, a Goddard school, and then the ownership changes, and it's like,
That's not why I
that
came.
that's not why now the brand isn't strong enough. And so you really have to look at it as you are still starting from scratch in a lot of ways. You have to build your own relationships. You have to deal with all of the employee relation problems that you inherit, sometimes without all of the context or backstory. And you got to figure it out. You can't just keep saying, well, old management did this, or what did your old manager say? You have to set the path that you want going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So myth number 2. I was going to say something else, but I've already spoken about it, but I'll repeat it really briefly because I think it's important. This idea that if you build it, they will come, right? Like, oh yeah, like as long as you're first, that's all that matters. If you're the only, that's all that matters. That's not a good reason. Like you need to dig a little bit deeper and have better reasons. But I would say one of the other biggest myths that I see is this idea of like what it means to be world class. Um, because that is a phrase or a term of like we're leading in the industry or something like that. I think what that does is it influences the perception of the brand to prospective franchisees, which they should be doing. They're trying to
Mhm.
sell you a franchise. But I think what it does is it sets a certain tone and an expectation for franchisees that like things are going to be really, really great. And I'm just telling you, like, it's not. Like it's not. And like we have to be honest about
There's a
that.
honeymoon phase,
No,
and
there is a
then
honeymoon phase
the
where
reality sets in,
the
like all
shine,
long-term relationships.
yeah, after a while, it's like, oh my gosh, like there are a lot of little issues, but you don't see it until you've been in the relationship. So if you've just gone to the conference in Vegas and you talk to the person and they walk you through, or that you tour the virtual tour and you do all those things and they talk about all the things that they're investing in that are coming down the pipeline and now's the perfect time. What you don't hear is that we really don't know what we're doing with priorities 3 through 10. We're figuring it out. When I tell you we're working on it, what I really meant was that it's a pilot in Guam and we're not quite there yet, but like we'll eventually get there. But like they're very good at talking about their ambitions and kind of blending their ambitions with the current state to help encourage people to like be mindful of what's coming and be excited about what's coming. And I just think that oftentimes the decision is being made based on potential growth and potential innovation
100%.
and not necessarily this current state of what is happening with the brand and how it's competing like right now.
Even when it's good. I remember when Chipotle rolled out their mobile app, and there was a brand that was growing like hotcakes, and they had to roll out the mobile app because the lines were getting ridiculous. And those owners had to figure out how to retrofit their stores to create this little mobile station. Like eventually through trial and error, they figured out like, okay, somebody has to create the mobile order separately
Right.
from the main line. But all of that is an expense that you as the owner have to take on. You have to figure out how to make it work. The new properties that they put out there will come already retrofitted. They're going to have a drive through. They're going to have a separate lane, like them Chick-fil-A's with 3 lanes instead of 2. Now, if I pull up at a Chick-fil-A with only 1 lane, I'm like, oh, this is an old Chick-fil-A
Right.
because now like the pace of change has accelerated. And we don't talk about the burden that that puts on existing owners. If you signed your contract 8 years ago, and by year 10, the model for how people get their food or ship their packages, or now Amazon allows people to bring packages into your UPS store, which adds to the amount of things that you have to process. If that wasn't in your numbers, it could completely break every assumption that you had. And
Yeah.
so when you're talking about long-term relationships, there is a little bit of understanding that it is going to evolve, and that's going to cost you some things
Listen,
financially, emotionally, and psychologically.
on top of that, if you want to be a franchisee owner and let's say the new version of whatever is a drive through or uniform, like there might be commercials for it on TV right now.
Oh, yeah. And you haven't
And
gotten yours
you
yet.
haven't gotten yours yet. And people are
People be
coming to your
mad at
store
you. Yeah.
expecting that thing and they're just telling you, oh well, we're not there yet, or the vendor is overwhelmed, or you're part of phase 3, but I'm going to see what we can do. I'm telling you, like these things happen all the time and for good reason. So just prepare yourself for that frustration. This is the trade-off that you make. Since you didn't do the research to figure out what the new innovation is on your own, you're not an independently owned or operated business, you can't just immediately enact change. You got to wait your turn.
Yes, you do.
And you may or may not be first in line. You might be 300th in line and there's nothing you can do
And
about
you
it.
still have to have the money to implement it.
That's it.
Which means, even if you are first in line, if you ain't got the 15 grand to update your POS system or to add in the QR code,
Correct.
mobile pay, whatever it is, like
And your point
you
of
get
view was going
skipped.
to be, well, where am I supposed to get the 15,000? Because I'm not getting the business that you guys said I
It
would get.
becomes a very
And then you
circular
got this circular
conversation. Yeah.
argument around saying, well, that's on you. And this is where people say, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. So, I'm just telling you, man. All right. Myth number 3. I think this is the last one. And this one, I think I will be brief, but considering who we're talking to, considering the group that we said inspired this conversation, the third myth I would say is around diversity initiatives. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I will say this: if you thought or if you think that diversity initiatives in corporate America are shallow, well, you ain't seen nothing yet, right? Like there's very little reason for someone to want to give a license to someone for reasons of diversity, unless there's like a financial incentive for them to do so, right? Like, sure, they support the cause, they'll figure out some other way, but a 30-year agreement, and I agree, like, should not be given to someone just because they are Black or a woman, right? Like, unless it has been legislated and they are mandated to do it like through a supplier agreement. So here in Atlanta, for example, it's written into the contracts for the airport that X amount of the businesses that operate within Hartsfield Jackson Airport are given to minority ownership groups.
Right.
That's different, right? That's legislated. You need to find someone to own stalls 1 through 20 in Concourse E. I'm just making it up, right? But if you're having conversations with the brand and they don't really have a reason for them to do that, I just would not be betting on those things. And I say that because there are some brands out there who promote that as one of the things that makes them special. And there are brands out there who do have significantly higher ownership rates for Blacks and African Americans or other minority groups. But it in some cases, it's not really a function of anything that the brand did. It's really just a function of where that business operates and the geographic situation that kind of dictate the demographics there. And so I just know people get excited about those things. They see it and they say, wow, that's just another sign that now was the time. And I'm just saying, like, there's very little evidence to show that any of those kinds of programs have been successful, because like there's not really much that the brand can do outside of waiving the application fee.
Right.
Like, you still have to be in tip top financial shape. You still need to be able to build your team. You still need to be able to find the funding and the financing to build this operation, etc. And if there's not a similar diversity program at the bank, the diversity program for the application means little to nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. When I think about who franchising is for, I think of people who have serious levels of experience. Like, I always think of this as like their second career. Sure,
Yeah.
there are some young franchisees who, maybe interned and worked their way up from the fries to owning whatever business it is. But a lot of people have either experience leading, they have military backgrounds, they're
Engineers.
engineers, they're really good at following instructions or processes. They're great at motivating
Yep.
people, just people, right? And
Real estate developers, I think, right there, because they have a competitive edge. And we talk about this all the time. They have a competitive edge that they can exploit, and it solves a major problem within the operations of the business. And as a result, it's easier for them to focus on 2 of the 3 major keys, because one of them just comes naturally, or they got the cheat code.
and you can hire a manager for the
And you can
third one.
hire the manager for the
Yeah.
other one. That's the key.
Yeah. 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 I think it's for people who are very clear on what they bring to the table, what partners they need to get on board with the project, and have a good understanding of how to manage that all, because it is a people business. If you don't understand how many hands are required to actually make it do what it's supposed to do, then you're going to be upset every time.
Yeah.
It's not a solo operation. You're going to have to be able to tell the story, take care of your employees. Like, that's one thing we didn't talk about. We talked about the brand in terms of a customer perspective and in terms of a franchisor franchisee relationship, but that employee relationship,
Brutal.
man, like
Brutal.
you really got to understand the psychology of the front
Managing and
line.
leading people.
Yes. and frontline employees. And that goes back to location. You can have the best location in the world for customers, but if your employees, your frontline can't get there because there's no bus route or because your hours conflict with the school day or for whatever reason, you still end up in the same problem. So you really have to understand humanity and people and what it takes to accomplish something big and amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So if we've not already dissuaded you from, no, again, I'm not trying to dissuade anyone. I just want to make
No,
sure
I
that
think
we're
it's
giving
yes.
a full picture. And so let's close out with kind of talking about like what we would look for, right? Like, we've spoken a little bit about like who it's for, but like, what would you look for if you were still looking for or still looking forward to becoming a franchisee? Like what things would you be looking for?
I'd be looking for an invite at this stage in my life. Like, I'm not
I agree.
interested in applying blindly. I'm not interested in not knowing someone on the inside, whether it is a city councilman or someone specifically from the sales conference that understands exactly what I bring to the table. And that's just the stage of life that I'm in, right? A lot of the caution and framing for these podcasts is because we're adults. Like, we grown. If I was 22, I'd have a totally different tone with talking about franchising or anything else. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about 30 years of a relationship, 20 years of a relationship at 40, it's like, all right, so I'm gonna be 60, 65, 70. Like I need to know that you got me and I got the best terms.
Yeah, I completely agree because I think going back to this romantic perspective that a lot of people have, you hear these stories of people who have 100 units or they're one of the largest franchise owners for this particular brand. And I can assure you that person did not, if they got 100 units, they did not pay an application fee 100 times.
Right.
I can assure you that,
No.
right? Part of the deal was that they're going to waive these things and these things, and that they're going to be able to, again, leverage that scale to share in the savings, right? If you want me to put my money down and to sign these agreements and to find the funding for these things, what are you as a brand going to be able to offer me? Well, here's the discount. We're going to waive these fees. We're going to buy you into a different kind of agreement that's unique for multi-unit owners, which means you're going to save significantly more on these core things with sheets. I'm just making it up, technology, whatever it is, right? You're going to benefit from the scale as well. And we're both going to prosper. Like that's it. And it might even be like, you know what, we're going to come in with it on this one, right? This core one. We're going to call this one here in Atlanta the 50/50 one. And then after 5 years, you can buy us out and then you have it, because it's important for us to create this new model with these new things and to put you at the face of it, because we think that that's going to unlock potential for the brand. So I think you're completely right. There's like, if you're, and it's not for everyone, it's not to say that you can't walk in from outside and start from scratch and get there. But I think I agree with you at this stage. If we're not being invited in
Yeah, either through
where
an
someone
existing
has already
franchisee.
done, city council has already done the feasibility study and you came in top of mind because they needed someone to close the deal quickly and they know your experience, right? Those kinds of things like save
I'm
me
even
time
talking
and
about an
money.
existing franchisee. Like, if you already got the storefront and you need someone with my experience or you
Right.
need my capital, then like, yeah, I'm down. But as a general matter,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
too much work.
Yeah.
Um, all right. I wouldn't say this is something that I would be looking for, but I think a must have would have to be like really, really, really deep pockets. I think most people are prepared for like deep pockets, but not for like two more release, like 3-time really, because again, like you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I mean, unless you're prepared to like, you still have to pay people when no one comes into the store.
Oh, yeah.
No one came into the store
You got
today.
to pay people even when they don't come in. You got to do holiday pay. You got to do paid
Even
time off.
you have to pay people even when they don't do a good job,
Yes, you do.
right? They could be outside your store smoking a cigarette right now, still earning money, right? And unless you agree to be there managing them, supervising them every step of the way, you just kind of have to trust that your manager or whoever is supervising the store is going to do a good job. And the reality is, it's incredibly difficult to expect an employee to have an ownership mindset for your store. It's just
Yeah.
not going to happen. And so I would be looking for super deep pockets to make up for the eventual issues, the downtimes, the setbacks. And I would have, like, my second cheat code would be, I have a community of people that I know helps to solve for the labor issues, to your point. Like, it could be, I'm just making it up, there's someone in our community who we know, just through the nature of what they do, can find 15 to 20 young teenage boys to come work at the Six Flags or whatever because of the nature of their business, right? Like, if that's who you need, because you already know that you're going to go through 10 or 15 cashiers this summer and you need to train them quickly. Like, you cannot go through the process of starting from scratch to find talent. And the same thing goes for managers too, right? You got to have a plug or a connect with the school or something. But like, you have the ability to solve major problems around labor very quickly. If you don't, it's going to be tough.
All right. Well, I thought we were going to end on a high note, but
we could end on a high
Julian
note.
had the last sentence, so y'all already know. So,
what's your favorite franchise?
Ooh,
if you had to build one right now,
I would build a UPS store for sure.
You would,
for sure. Small footprint.
You're not working in a UPS store.
Small footprint.
You ain't working in a UPS store.
I could. The one that, so the owner of I go to two, but the owner of the one, there's only one of them that's open on Sunday. And the owner of that one be in there every Sunday. She be in there.
Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if she's there all day, but.
Right. I don't know that there's one that I would like really be interested in owning. I think if I had to pick just off the top of my head, it would be an extended stay hotel.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
One of those, like something that's like right across the street from a hospital. And it's, extended stay. People go there and they set up for a week, or they're construction workers and they set up for a month, or it's next to some kind of technology headquarters and they bring people in for big projects all the time and they place them there. Something like that, which is basically like running a dorm.
Yes.
Is what I would be.
Well, so I'm attracted to very limited service
low labor,
models.
Limited service, self-service. I just got to keep it clean and make sure that I've got the 10 to 15 contracts that give me base business. Like, that's what I would be interested in.
Yes. There's a couple that owns the Kale Me Crazy down the street. If y'all don't have a Kale Me Crazy, it's like a little small, like health driven restaurant, but limited service. No. Wraps,
salad
yogurts.
Greens go bad too quick. I'm not interested. Salad greens go bad in about 2 days. I'm throwing away.
I also like seasonal businesses. So like if you are a snow cone franchise or
I would do a snow cone.
Even limited hours, like a breakfast franchise, like a J. Christopher's. I'm only open from 5 to 2, Monday through Sunday, whatever. But like, it's not a full day thing.
Yeah, hard stop after that.
Those are my jams.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of the Rich and Regular podcast. If you like what you heard, let us know by leaving us a 5-star. I was trying to think of a licensing thing, but I couldn't think of one. So just let us know by leaving a 5-star rating or review, or drop a comment below. Keep the conversation going, and we'll see y'all next week.
Peace.
If you like videos like this and want to see more, make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications.